All right, so this is the answer to the Unit 7 free response question. So it says the Madison Abigail Corporation is a profit maximizing monopolist. They sell a patented drug that creates tardiness in students. They earn an economic profit. So for letter A, draw a correctly labeled graph that shows each of the following: the output and price of the drug and the area of economic profit. Okay, so for letter A, okay, they're asking us a question about the product market because they're selling a product. Okay, so we have to draw a monopoly. Okay, so obviously there's our quantity and price. Okay, we have our demand curve, our marginal revenue curve. Okay, we have our marginal cost curve. A lot of you still aren't doing this correctly. Again, they produce at where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So this is going to be the quantity that the monopoly will produce at. And again, this is the price that the monopoly will charge for the tardiness drug. It tells us that they are earning an economic profit. Okay, so obviously we have to know that our ATC curve has to be below the price. So again, just put a dot there somewhere below. Again, it has to be the lowest point where it hits the marginal cost curve. So there's ATC there. There's our ATC curve there. And they want us to show the area of economic profit. So we go straight down from our price until we hit the ATC curve. Okay, so that's how you'd answer question A correctly. For letter B, it says, assume that the Madison Abigail Corporation hires its workers in a perfectly competitive labor market at a wage of $30 per hour. Draw a correctly labeled side-by-side graph that shows the labor supply and demand curves. Okay, so now we're moving away from the product market and we're moving into the factor market. If I had to guess, this is probably what the big question on the AP exam is going to look like this year because they can cover both the product and the factor market. Okay, so again, now we're not purchasing goods, we're purchasing labor. Okay, so again, we have the market for workers and we have the firm hiring workers. Okay, so we still have our supply curve here, but it's a supply curve for labor. Here's our demand for labor, what businesses are looking for. Again, this is still quantity, but now this label is wages. We just said that this was $30, and this is the quantity that the market would hire. So again, now we have to find out what the firm's going to do. Okay, so again, it's still going to be $30. But again, this is different now in the factor market. This is the supply of labor, which is MRC, our marginal resource cost. We have our demand curve, it's downward sloping. Our demand for labor, which is our marginal revenue product, and they would hire this many workers in the firm. Okay, so we indicated the profit maximizing quantity of labor for the corporation, so we did part B. For part C, suppose that the market wage now falls to $25 per hour, showing your diagram how it would affect the following. So it doesn't specifically tell us if it's supply or demand being affected, but we do know that the price is going down. So you could have shifted the demand curve. I'm just going to show that the supply curve is shifted. Okay, so again, this would now be $25. And this is the quantity that the market would now hire. And then again, we have our supply of labor and an MRC number 2. And again, notice now that the quantity of the firm hire goes up. Okay, so the question for C was 2 parts after we look at the graph. The supply of labor to the firm, well, what happened to our supply of labor? It shifted down. And then for part 2, the amount of labor that they would hire, well, what happened to the amount of labor that we hire? There was an increase in labor. All right, finally, part D. Given the lower wage rate, indicate how each of the following would change. So the first one they ask us for total fixed costs. Well, fixed cost is not going to be impacted by a change in the hiring of workers. So for number one, we would say no change. For part two, it's asking us what happens to the marginal cost. Well, what happened to our marginal cost here? Our marginal resource cost was here, and then it went down there. So we have a decrease in our marginal cost. And for letter three, the price of the drug. Well, obviously the price of the drug went from $30 to $25. So we had a decrease in the price of the drug. Okay, so that's how you would answer a question like this. And again, my guess would be that this is going to be something similar to what you're going to see on the AP exam this year, where they ask you in like letter A about the product market, and then in the second part of the question, they're going to ask you about the factor market, and then they could obviously switch it between monopoly and perfect competition for both.